The last problem that we worked on was a little bit more challenging. So in this section, we're going to take a little bit of a breather with a slightly more easier problem, or at least one that is certainly short in nature. Not many lines of code are required for this one. So inside of my exercises folder, I'll find the capitalized directory and open up the index.js file inside there. I'll then change on over to my terminal, and I'll make sure that my tests are running over here by running the command just capitalize test.js -- watch. And we should see about 3 or 4 tests start to run. So it looks like, yeah, 3 tests right here. Cool. So let's look at this problem. Now, this one is a little bit more straightforward, but I think that it's one that appears at first glance to be very easy, but in practice, it does require at least a little bit of thought. So the goal is to write a function that takes a string. We want to capitalize the first letter of each word in that string, and then return the capitalized version. So for example, a short sentence, which is all lowercase, should turn into capital A, short with the capital S, sentence with the capital S. So essentially just capitalize the first letter of each word. That's pretty much it. Like I said, at first glance it looks really easy, but once you start putting together, well, it might get a little bit more challenging. Now, I'll tell you right now that there are 2 distinct solutions that we're going to look at to this problem. The first one is going to, well, we'll say that the first one, I'm thinking of them out of order here, but we'll say that the first one that we're going to look at is pretty concise. It's rather few lines of code, and it's rather easy to read. But that solution requires a pretty good knowledge of the JavaScript standard library for working with strings. The second solution, the second one that we are going to look at, is kind of easy to reason about, but it does require kind of a nasty looking for loop, and it's kind of hard to tell exactly what's going on with it by just looking at the code. So I'm telling you right now that you can either take a slightly easier to read solution by having a good understanding of the JavaScript standard library, or you can take a slightly more challenging to read version that just kind of brute forces it and makes it happen. So before I let you go, I do want to give you a little tip or two on how to approach that kind of easier to read solution. And I want to point out to you a couple of methods that belong to the standard library that you might want to be aware of. So the first method that we're going to look at, and again we are at the MDN documentation page, is the slice method belonging to all strings. Remember, slice can be used on a string. It will take some number of elements out of that string. The first argument is the index of that string to start from, and then there's an optional second argument of the end index. If you don't provide that second argument right there, then the rest of the string is just automatically included. So where would this be useful? Well, let me show you a quick example of it. Let's imagine that we have a word of simply there. If we do word.slice with simply 1, it gives us everything after the t. Now if we wanted to get just the t, we can look at word at 0. And now the part that you really need to be aware of, remember we have access to the toUpperCase function like so. So very quickly I think you can see how we can take a lowercase word like this and start to capitalize just the first letter. So here is clearly capital T, here's the rest of the word, and I'm sure you can figure out how to join those two together. So these 2 methods right here will lead you towards a rather straightforward solution. Again, this is not the only solution. You can take a little bit more brute force one than this, but certainly give this a try. So I'm going to now let you kind of roam free on this one, give it a shot, and I'll catch you in the next section, and we will go through the first solution. So quick break, and I'll see you in a minute.